I represent my family. I represent my community. I represent my church. In lots of situations, I represent Tim and Demi Tebow. And most importantly, though, I represent Jesus Christ. It's just a constant reminder. Remember who you represent. Quit being a wimp. There are things you know you are called to better in your business and your family. Why aren't you doing them? Quit being a wimp, even though it might be hard. It's never, ever, ever too late to start doing the right thing.
Welcome to the Courageous Men Podcast, where we help Christian men follow God faithfully, love their families well, and build a legacy that lasts. And now your host, Whitney Sewell.
Welcome back to the Courageous Men Show. Today, our guest is someone I deeply respect, a man who has led at the highest levels of business while keeping Christ at the center. Tommy Martin is the CEO of the Tebow Group, where he oversees all of Tim Tebow's family's business, talent, and creative ventures, and using media and influence to fuel the mission of the Tebow Foundation, serving some of the world's most vulnerable people. Before that, Tommy built and exited several financial firms, managing over $2 billion in assets. He founded Mammoth Venture Capital. He was named one of the Investment News Top 40 Advisors Under 40. But what stands out most isn't Tommy's success. It's his faith. He's a husband, a father of three, and a man who's learned that true leadership isn't about ownership, but stewardship. Today, we're talking about the steward's mindset and leading businesses that outlive you, and how to build influence, wealth, and impact that lasts beyond your lifetime, and how to stay grounded when you find success. Tommy, welcome to the show.
So glad to be with you, Whitney. Thanks so much for having me.
I know you have built and sold billion-dollar financial firms, and before leading one of the most visible, faith-driven organizations in the world. What did success not give you that you thought it would?
I think like a lot of people, Whitney, the definition I had of success when I was much younger is very different than the one that I would have today. And when I was starting out, I grew up on the lower side of middle class and looked at my friends that maybe their family had a nicer house, or they had a nicer car, or whatever it might be. And, initially I kind of looked at that as success. It was like this almost financial success. I think that's maybe why I went down the path of building financial firms. Was like, well, if I take care of people that have enough success, then eventually I'll look like them. And a lot of that materialized as our firms grew and we built enduring companies. At some point you find yourself looking at it saying, wait a minute. Everything that I thought mattered the most actually now matters the least. And I have so many friends, Whitney, where, they've built these incredible businesses, sometimes billion-dollar businesses, but their daughter's no longer with us because of a drug overdose. And when I talk with those friends, they all say, I would trade it all, every single penny. I would trade it just to have my baby girl back. I'm so grateful. I didn't get down that path of losing my kids along the way, but I don't remember my children being young. I don't remember a lot of moments with my kids under age 5. Those were those formative years. I was like starting the businesses from scratch, working nonstop, 100-hour weeks, and looking back, like I don't remember those moments with my kids. And so if I could go do it again, I just wish I would do it smarter and do it with a lot more balance along the way. Balance might even be the wrong word, but with a lot more intentionality along the way, that I don't actually have to trade all that time with the family in order to be successful. I think I missed the mark on that part in my much younger days.
I remember, Tommy, I think it was my third child. She may have been 3 years old, but she was helping load the dishwasher. It's something that simple, right? And I was just watching her, but it hit me in that moment that I don't remember my older two ever doing that. They did it, but I wasn't there. Similar. I was like, oh my goodness, Lord, and I was even sharing that something similar with my wife recently, and she's just amazing to support me, right, in times like that. And she was like, the Lord is Redeemer. He can redeem that time, and I'm just like, Lord, would you do that? So what changed for you now versus then, Tommy? Now that you can look back and you can see that, what are some ways maybe the Lord stirred in you to change how you were at home?
Yeah, it's really that definition of success.
Mm,
And does that mean profit? Does that mean higher EBITDA? Does that mean more revenue? Or does that mean deeper relationships? Does that mean more service? Does that mean greater impact? Does that mean having the opportunity to actually introduce people to faith that maybe haven't had someone else in their life come alongside them and show them what that looks like, or what certainly you and I believe God sent his son to do for them?
hmm
And those things matter a whole lot more to me now. I used to care a lot what my clients and my business partners and my employees all thought. I'm so grateful now. I care a whole lot more what God thinks. And I figure if I honor the Lord, the rest will fall into place in those other areas. I wish I had had that mentality all along the way. I spent a lot of time being a wimp, being not the guy I knew I was called to be, because I cared too much what some of those other stakeholders thought, forgetting the fact that there's really only one stakeholder that actually matters.
Man, love that. Can you elaborate maybe on a time when you look back and think, man, I was a wimp in that scenario, and this is how I'm handling this moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Several moments along the way in business, I had a sense of what the right thing to do would be. And these are not like black and white areas, okay?
Sure.
These are the real world scenarios that we all live in day in and day out. These are like the gray areas where the right answer is not completely clear. And so what do you do when you're in that situation? Well, my hope is now, if I were doing it, I'd go seek a lot of wise counsel. I would, take time to pray about it. I would understand the implications. I would think through the long term, the short term. How is this going to impact all these stakeholders? And then I think I'd be pretty decisive in my decision making. But the much younger version of me as a leader would sit in that same room and have a sense after doing some of those things of what the right thing to do would be, and then not always stand up and be decisive for what I thought it was, and instead just allow myself almost to be tossed around like the wind or the waves,
Mm,
instead of being decisive for what I believed was right in those gray area moments. Um, and I don't necessarily know where that comes from. Insecurity, not necessarily trusting myself or my opinion or the wise counsel I had sought. I wish I've never fully unpacked that part, Whitney, but certainly today I'm a much more decisive leader, especially if there's an area where I've ultimately arrived at a conclusion of what I believe the most right thing to do is. I'm no longer shy about that, no longer kind of waver, if you will, into allowing people to persuade something that I don't believe is the most right thing to do.
mm. I mean, so many of us we equate that achievement, right, with identity. It's like who we are. It's all wrapped up in that, right? How have you maybe separated that, from your identity from really what you accomplish? And because it sounds like you care about standing up for the right thing. You're much more bold, maybe in those moments now because of Christ, right, and because of standing in that moment versus what other people think, or that may have even led to more worldly success.
Well, I'll give you my most egregious examples. So grateful I got to go through a pretty prestigious program through Harvard Business School called their Program for Leadership Development. It was one of those moments, was able to call my mom and let her know, like, hey, I just got into Harvard Business School, and we're both like in tears. Really cool moment. Go through this program where on the backside of it, you don't get a degree, you're not an MBA, but you earn alumni status from Harvard Business School. And it's this really crowning achievement. Very low acceptance rate into the programs. I mean, all the things you would want from this prestigious institution. And Whitney, when I first got out there, so the way the program was designed, you'd go spend 2 weeks on campus, 16-hour days, 2 weeks on campus, then 4 months at home, 2 weeks on campus, 4 months at home, 2 weeks on campus. Okay. So you get the idea. So when I'm on campus, I go to the bookstore and I just buy every Harvard Business School piece of gear that they possibly have. So now when I get back for 4 months at home, everywhere I'm going, I'm walking around with a Harvard Business School sweatshirt, a Harvard Business School t-shirt, a Harvard Business School polo, a Harvard Business School coffee cup. My identity is look at me. I got into this prestigious Ivy League institution. Now, again, I didn't actually go into their MBA program. For me, that became the identity. And it wasn't just me, it was almost everyone in our cohort of over 100 people. Almost all of us were operating this way. And we get down to the end of the program and we're about to be awarded alumni status from Harvard Business School. And I remember looking around the room as this is happening. And for many of my cohort, I see them sitting there and there's this sense of like almost despair or grief on their faces. And I realize in that moment, they're feeling the same thing I am. Here, they've put so much identity into this and they realize it's still not plugging the hole they have in their life. And that was a really important spiritual growth moment for me, Whitney. What I realized is, man, there is a God-shaped hole in all of us,
Mm.
and absolutely nothing can fulfill that hole except him. Not the business succeeding, not a ton of money, not a nicer car, not a alumni status from a prestigious Ivy League business school. There's a hole in all of our lives that only God can fill. And I'm so grateful in that moment as I was looking around my cohort, realizing so many of them were experiencing this moment of grief that they thought they were going to fulfill this hole. I had the gift from the Lord of realizing, oh my goodness, I've been trying to plug the hole in all the wrong places. And for me, it became a moment of deepening my faith, really renewing my faith in a much stronger way and my relationship with Christ. Just having that gift of realizing there's nothing else in life that can fill that hole except Jesus.
Mm. Wow. And that was how many years ago?
This was back in 2014, so I guess
Yeah.
11 years ago now. And I-
So
and and I really became a very different leader after that moment. Very different leader. I'm grateful for that moment. I'm grateful for that opportunity. I'm grateful for my cohort going through business school. These are still some of my best friends around the world to this day. And my hope for every single one of them is that ultimately they're able to fill that hole in their lives that you and I both know only Jesus can fill.
that's right. It's interesting. You share that story and you talk about standing bold, and because I know obviously you're leading the Tebow Group, and I feel like it's um, probably one of the most recognizable, say, Christian names or organizations, right? that everybody probably thinks of, right? That I would imagine. What would you say is the hardest part? Because I feel like it's so connected to what you're talking about, though. The hardest part about just say leading, um, just under that constant visibility, right? As well.
It's a real thing. It is a very visible name and brand. And what I'm so grateful for is, I get to spend time day in and day out with Tim Tebow, his wife, Demi Tebow. Tim is the only three-time Heisman finalist ever. Demi is a former Miss Universe. Both just incredible, incredible individuals. But they would
They don't like drive.
no, exactly right. Very driven. But what I love is they're not driven to make it about themselves.
Yeah.
Literally, they are driven for what we call the real MVP, not the most valuable player, which would be easy for a Heisman Trophy winner and a Miss Universe to say, hey, I'm the MVP. No, they're not driven for the most valuable player. They are driven for what we call the real MVP, the most vulnerable people around the globe. And it's very real for Tim and Demi. We get to see them inside and out. One of my favorite questions, Whitney, people ask all the time, are they really as passionate as they seem? Are they really as kind as they seem? And the answer is they're actually more.
Hmm.
When you actually get to know them, become friends with them, they're just some of my dearest friends in the world. And what the public sees is actually a lesser reality of who they are from a passion standpoint, from a faithfulness standpoint. And this is not to say that they're perfect. They would never want people to think that's how they even try to operate. But it is a very genuine passion and mission to serve some of the most vulnerable people around the globe. And you couldn't ask for two people with greater drives to be leading the charge for those people.
Mm. Yeah, I've heard many great stories of the work that you all are doing there, all over the world. Really, I mean, it's pretty amazing for the most vulnerable people. I love that. Man, love the awareness that you all are bringing to those people, to say the least. And as I think through like you leading that, and even within the just conversation we're having, in that train of thought, how do you hold yourself accountable in that? Tell me about, do you have a board or a group of men that you've selected to surround you, or just think about the men listening who are seeking to lead like that, right? Seeking to be that bold leader, like you've talked about how the Lord's grown you to become. Who around you is mentoring you or holding you accountable in those situations?
Well, I can't give that an answer without really addressing four ways that happens. So
Mm,
first and foremost, is my wife. My wife is the greatest accountability partner I could ever have. God put her in my life for so many incredible reasons. She does not put up with any BS, and she
good
will
for her.
call it. She will call it the moment she sees it. I never have to wonder what she's thinking. She's not one of those passive aggressive individuals. She just comes alongside me and lets me know. And if I start to get a little too full of myself, she'll remind me, and in a very healthy way. So it really starts with my wife, but it leads into one of our family's core values. And one of our family's core values is remember who you represent. And so I represent my family. I represent my community. I represent my church. I represent now the team at the Tebow Group. In lots of situations, I represent Tim and Demi Tebow. And most importantly, though, I represent Jesus Christ. And so I think just that acknowledgement of that core value and allowing that to carry throughout my life, it's just a constant reminder. Remember who you represent. It's very clear to me who I represent. I actually have a little card I keep on my desk, and it's the people's whose opinions I actually care if they matter. And I represent all of the people on that list, and I want to do that well. So that would be my second part, would be that core value. I think the third part, I've been blessed to be part of an incredible C12 group. For your listeners that don't know, C12 is a Christian peer forum. So these are business leaders that we all choose to get together on a monthly basis, typically 12 of us, hence the 12. But we all choose to get together on a monthly basis to really challenge, encourage, and inspire one another. And that group has been an incredible accountability for me. We talk about something called buffalo culture, and the idea is the buffalo is one of the only animals out there. When there's a storm coming, the buffalo runs into it. And I have not always been good at that type of mentality of there's a problem coming, I'm going to run into it. I used to cower and hide or even run away from it. And having this group in my life has really trained me as a leader to run into the storm, not away from it. And last but not least, the team at the Tebow Group, we all hold each other accountable. One of our core values is we bring our best because monsters are chasing her. We're in this fight against human trafficking across the world. The Tim Tebow Foundation, the nonprofit side of Tim and Demi's world, serves in over 100 countries in all 50 states in incredible areas for the most vulnerable people. One of those areas is anti-human trafficking and child exploitation. Our team holds each other accountable because we bring our best because monsters are chasing her, meaning it's ultimately accountability to that next individual that we need to go be a part of their recovery story. And if we don't show up and do our best, that means lives are going to be impacted. That means children are going to be harmed. And so there's intense accountability that comes with knowing if I screw it up today, people's lives are going to be hurt And so I'm going to get out there and I'm going to give it my absolute best. I think that's a lot of accountability. Some people would think of it as pressure. I am so grateful. I don't feel it as bad pressure. I feel it as like this really incredible wind at my back pressure. Yeah, it's pressure. Yeah, it's accountability. But man, when you're fighting for something that you're passionate about and you love and you feel called to do because you know that's where God wants you serving, then that pressure, I think, can be just an incredible force for good.
I love that. I love that for the team. My goodness, to know it's they're very aware of the mission that they're a part of as well, right? That everything they're doing today, whether they're taking out the trash or whether they're making a super important phone call, they're part of that mission that's bigger than themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, our mission at the Tebow Group is to fuel and amplify faith, hope, and love. And the fuel side is it's Tim and Demi's hearts. They want to be able to fully fund the administrative overhead at the Tim Tebow Foundation so that when other families like yours or mine are contributing to the incredible work that they're doing, that our dollars would all go directly to impact. And so that's the fuel side of what our charge is on the business side of what we do. And then the amplify side, when we say we fuel and amplify faith, hope, and love, the amplify side, that's our job to amplify the voice of the most vulnerable people and make sure that they have a platform, that they have a voice when other people may not even know the incredible evil that happens all around us day in and day out.
Couple of things there. Many of the men listening are entrepreneurs, business owners, and I love that. I want them to think about like having that mission component, like you're talking about, right? That the team, your employees know that hey, they're playing a part of something, or their work today plays a role, something much bigger than just them getting a paycheck, and that's exactly what you've done there. But one other thing that I wanted you to be able to elaborate on is you talked about that family core value, right? Speak to the importance of that because that's odd. I talk about it a lot, but I'm realizing that hey, that's not a common thing, right? But I felt like hey, if it's that important at work, to have that structure, that vision, that thought, why don't we do that at home? Why don't we teach our kids what these values are and have these things we can point back to, right? But how have maybe you could elaborate on that? How have you all done that in your home, and how important has that been?
Oh, I think it's so important inside of a business, inside of a family. I'll try to tie that all together. But the first company I went and joined as a professional, if you will, their core values were trust, strength, integrity, quality, respect, community. I have them all memorized. This is 26 years later. But here's the deal. Those core values really meant nothing. I don't mean to say that lightly, but if you think about it, most of them are table stakes. Trust, integrity, respect. Are you kidding me? You're going to build your culture on that. Like, shouldn't we just expect that? Shouldn't that be table stakes? You're going to show up in the morning and you're going to be a trustworthy individual or you're not going to work here anymore. You're going to have integrity and respect people or you're not going to work here anymore. Those are not core values that determine a different culture for that company than somebody else. And so I want core values that are so meaningful that we can say, this is the culture we have here. It's not like a culture you would experience anywhere else because a different company should have their own set of core values that really drives the behaviors and the attitudes and the way people show up day in and day out. And so we've been very, very intentional about our core values and our non-negotiables as a team. What is it that we expect from a culture? And going through that, the most important outcome I expect to get out of that is I want to compel the right people to come join our team and participate as part of that culture. And even more important, I want to repel the wrong people from coming and joining the team. And I love it. Before we hire any individuals, and I promise I'll circle back to the family in just a second here, but before we hire any individuals, I'm the final call that they have. And it's less of an interview and it's more of an expectation setting moment to say, this is the culture we have embraced as a team. These are the 6 core values we hold dear in this culture. And I promise you, if you fulfill those, you'll have a bright future with us. And if you don't, you will be off of this team very, very quickly. And I am not afraid to walk someone out the door to a much better opportunity for them somewhere not with us. And so, but if you believe that in your business, isn't it kind of the same thing in your family? Don't you want to have a special culture with your family, with your wife, with your children? Don't you want to compel and repel the right friends for your family, whether that's your friends or whether that's your children's friends? Like, I want those same things for our family that I want for our business. Our core values and the culture we're building is just a little bit different as a family than the culture I might build inside of a company. And so, we took multiple opportunities as a family, typically when we were away on a vacation somewhere, to be really intentional about, hey, what is that culture we're trying to build as a family? What do we expect from each other? And what would we expect of someone wanting to come participate with this family on an intimate basis? How do we compel the right people and repel the wrong people? I'm so glad we did that. I think it's really helped set the culture of our family. I think it's made us closer because we have this shared culture that we all kind of understand. And it also creates accountability because we've all agreed this is what's expected of each other as a family unit.
How is that brought up like across the family? I know in and on a company setting, obviously we're talking about core values often. I mean, it's just a common thing in discussion, right? But what does that look like at home for you?
Well, so I really go back to middle school. Those were formative years for me. They were hard years for me growing up. And so I made the decision I was going to be actively present in my children's lives, especially during middle school. And so most days in middle school, I dropped my kids off at school. And actually we'd take some neighbor kids too. And when I would drop them off, Monday, we had five core values as a family, and Monday was a core value, and we would talk about it. Tuesday was a core value. Wednesday was a core value. Thursday, Friday. So repeat that, rinse and repeat that. I don't know how many weeks a year, 40 weeks a year for 3 years. And you hope it sticks. Did they love it every day? No, of course not. They were middle schoolers. But do I think those values have stuck with them now that they're out of our house and off to college? Yeah, I do. I'm really proud of our kids. And I do believe that those core values have stuck with them along the way.
So incredible. I love that you were that intentional with them, even though you talked about maybe not being there the first few years, right? You realize, hey, especially those middle school years, I want to be super available, super with them, and even instill those core values on them. Maybe when you think about legacy, what do you hope that they remember or think about you for, maybe the way you handled success or anything, Tommy, whether it's your team or and your kids.
Well, I'm so blessed I get to travel around and hear Tim Tebow say a lot of really, really incredible words. And some of my favorites that I've heard Tim talk about, Whitney, he talks about the difference between legacy and inheritance. And the way I've heard Tim define it is, look, an inheritance is something you leave for someone, but a legacy is something you leave in someone. And as I think about my kids, it's less about how I hope they'll remember me or how my grandkids might remember me or my great grandkids. It's more, I hope ultimately that I help instill a love for Jesus in my children and a kindness for everyone and a realization that every single person we encounter was created in God's image. And what would change if I remembered day in and day out that He created me as His adopted royalty? If I remembered that about myself, how would I change the way I see myself? Wow. And then how would I change the way that I see others if I saw you as God's adopted royalty, or I saw that individual with special needs as God's adopted royalty, or even though this one might be the hardest of all, that person that has an opinion I really, really don't like. if I saw them as God's adopted royalty, man, it changes everything about the way I treat others. And that one was modeled as I'm going through the grocery store checkout, probably more than anywhere. How kind am I to the person bagging groceries? Man, I hope I modeled that so well for my kids that someday when they're checking out, bagging groceries, and maybe they won't always be delivered to our homes, I hope they will show up with a level of kindness and care, realizing that person was made in God's image. That person is God's adopted royalty. And I just hope they saw me model that with everyone that I encountered, or as many people as possible, and that would rub off in who they become. And then if that love for Jesus and that recognition of others would rub off in their children and their children's children and their children's children, man, I'd be thrilled, even if nobody ever attributed that to me. If that's the real legacy that was left in them, praise the Lord, sign me up.
Love that. And no doubt they're gonna catch that by how you model that, right? No doubt you're gonna tell them about it. But I love the story too that you talk about. It reminded me of when you are walking through the airport and Tim Tebow leading the blind man to his car.
Well,
You know,
yeah, yeah, Whitney, this is you just gave away the story, but I'll take our listeners through it. Truly, it's one of my favorite stories of working with Tim, and it just shows you the type of man that he is. So, what happened is four of us landed in Jacksonville, Florida. And, this is Tim's hometown. We get off the airplane, we're walking through the Jacksonville airport, and three of us end up down at baggage claim. And we're looking, and eventually we realize, where's Tim? And none of us can find Tim. And so, I finally run back upstairs and I see Tim. I'm like, where'd you go? He's like, what are you talking about? Where did you guys go? And I'm like, what happened? He's like, there was literally a blind man that couldn't find his way out of the Jacksonville airport. And we all walked by this man, all four of us, but only one of us saw him.
Hmm.
And it was Tim. It was Tebow that saw him. Tebow saw the need. There's this man in trouble. And so Tim, being Tim, walks over, takes this man by the arm, and starts to lead him out of the airport. Now, two things strike me in this moment. At first, this is Jacksonville, Florida. There's nowhere on earth that Tim Tebow is more recognized than his hometown of Jacksonville, Florida. But this man is blind. He doesn't know it's Tim. Secondly, not many people in Jacksonville or anywhere have biceps as big as Tim's. So can you imagine? You can't see anything happening, but someone walks up next to you and takes you arm in arm with leg size arms. I can't imagine that moment. And so Tim walked him out to his car, and imagine being the driver picking up your loved one, and Tim Tebow is the one walking your loved one out to the car. And so I don't know what happened in that moment, but what I imagine is this blind individual gets inside of the car, and the family member was like, how did you have Tim Tebow walking you to the car? And that person, that's the first moment they realized this is Tim Tebow that had walked them to the car. But what really struck me about that story, Whitney, and it's really stayed with me. I was with Tim. Two other people were with Tim. None of us saw the blind man in trouble
Hmm.
except him. But we all walked by that same person. And it just makes me question in my everyday life, how many times am I walking by people in need and I just don't see them? Because I sure proved it in that moment. I walked by, I didn't see the need. And I'm so grateful to have a leader like we do in Tebow, that he not only saw the need, but he took action, even though it meant leaving all of us behind.
I love the example that he set, right? And the impression that that's left on you and now on me and other listeners, as well. And I was connecting that to how you're leading your children and how they're caring for that person sacking the groceries, right? It's same thing, you're leading in that way by example, in a massive way that's going to affect them the rest of their lives.
Well, it's awesome when we have incredible models coming directly from Tim and Demi. Makes it easy for the team to want to step up and operate that same way.
Tommy, if you could challenge, the men listening in maybe one way, just in how they're leading their businesses, but especially their families, even this week, just to be courageous in how they do that, what would that be?
Yeah, I don't know how to say it less bluntly, but quit being a wimp. There are things in your life you are called to better in your business and in your family. For everybody listening, there are things you are called to better in your business and your family. Why aren't you doing them? Quit being a wimp, even though it might be hard. It's never, ever, ever too late to start doing the right thing.
Man, that's so good, Tommy. So grateful for your time today. Man, where can the listeners learn more about you, your work at the Tebow Foundation or the Tebow Group, right, and other things that you're into?
Yeah, I think the most important place, timtebowfoundation.org, will help you learn all about the incredible work happening in over 100 countries in all 50
Wow.
states. People just have no clue the work that Tim and the team have been up to off the field along the way. And it is just my favorite story. I'm so grateful for your listeners to check that out. If you want to sync up with me further, the easiest place to do that is LinkedIn. It's just LinkedIn/ Tommy Martin. You'll find me, or go search Tommy Martin. You'll find me. Would love to connect with your listeners that way.